Deck the halls with macro follies.
Deck the halls with macro follies. Fa la 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 la.
Decking the halls with macro follies once again. Hey there, friends, fans, and foes of Dad Saves America. John Popola here. And first, I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving for you and your family, and welcome you to the Hunger Games that is Black Friday.
The Black Friday frenzy, an estimated 116 million shoppers hitting the stores. Bedlam in the aisles of some of the nation's biggest retailers, shoppers fighting over garments at this Victoria's Secret in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Deep discounts triggering a free-for-all. Bargain hunters at this Georgia Walmart wrestling over pots and pans. The commotion veering out of control at an Alabama mall.
Ah, yes, nothing makes you feel more uncomfortable about the culture of America than the perennial scenes of Americans devolving into zombies to get the latest deal at Walmart. Sometimes that de-evolution takes a uniquely dystopian turn.
What the hell is it?
Looks like a shopping center, one of those big indoor malls.
What are they doing? Why did they come here?
Some kind of instinct, memory of what they used to do. This was an important place in their lives.
It is an important place in our lives, the shopping mall, the online store, the place where we can get something new, something fun. And I don't mean to poo-poo it too much. It's fun to get a deal. I love going to Best Buy and seeing if I can get a good discount on a new television, even though I don't need one. But I think the thing that's less fun is the way our economic elite and, frankly, our entire culture talks about the role of consumer spending in our economy. This is an issue that, I am personally very passionate about because I think it is one of the places where the problems with how our economics is taught and then understood in popular discourse leads to profound misunderstandings about how to make our country greater, how to make our country wealthier, how to make our future brighter. And you see it time and again this time of year like clockwork.
Listen to any Fed speech or market analyst, and you might hear this buzzword, that the U.S. consumer is a big part of the economy. Here's Fed Chairman Jerome Powell.
70% of the economy, that is the consumers, is healthy with high confidence, low unemployment, wages moving up, very low unemployment, labor force participation. That is what is driving our economy now.
70% of the economy, what does that even mean? Well, that figure comes from personal consumption expenditures. That's an index of consumer spending on goods and services as measured by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And this chart shows you the percentage of U.S. consumption that's relative to GDP over the last 50 years. And a pretty clear trend here going upwards over that time. Now, of course, it's a good thing for a strong consumer to drive an economy.
It's a good thing for the strong consumer to drive the economy. As you can see, consumption has gone up. Consumption as a share of the dollars spent in our economy. GDP is essentially a measurement. It is not an equation. It's really just an accounting of all the dollars spent in a given year. And the way that accounting ends up breaking down is C for consumption spending. This is what we're talking about. Black Friday, Christmas presents, food, clothing, etc. Investment, I, which is money that gets spent on goods that actually are productive, equipment, factories, and the like. Government spending, which of course they take from us and spend, so it's even weird that government spending is included. But yeah, what the government spends having taken from us and thereby reducing our consumption and investment. And then net exports, so the total after you subtract imports of the goods and services that we sell to people abroad. That's GDP. It is a measurement. And over time, as you can see, consumption as a share of the total has gone up. And we are told over and over and over again, including from the Federal Reserve, that consumers drive the economy because consumption spending is 70% of GDP. We hear it over and over and over and over.
I don't think it's an amazing economy, and the reason it's not phenomenal is because consumers and households alike are managing their budgets like light switches. Some months we're seeing significant consumer spending, while others, they're really hunkering down, looking to alleviate the budget from past spending and also looking to save a little bit and provide more space for further months.
This is the nonsense, in my opinion, that we are bombarded with. How dare we manage our budgets? How dare we calculate what we should spend versus save and adjust it? We should try to spend more. This is also why you will hear during times of recession in particular, economists and politicians say it's good for growth and for recovery if public policy puts money in the hands of people who are more inclined to spend it than to save it. We will hear this when people talk about unemployment benefits or stimulus checks or even things like food stamps. It's stimulus for the economy to give money to people who have what economists call higher propensity to consume. Well, can't afford to save. I'm going to spend this time with you explaining why this is wrong, but first I wanted to share a little bit of a video I made over a decade ago mocking this because it's just that important and we have made just that little progress in understanding it.
The economy is just terrible. And we've already bought all these presents. I'm really worried about our future, honey.
What else can we do? I'm spending as fast as I can to stimulate the economy. Uh-oh. I just maxed out my credit card.
Here, use mine. The economy can use all the spending it can get.
Stop right there. Is your family's holiday spirit and checkbook suffering from the fallacy that consumer spending grows the economy? Well, say goodbye to this popular misconception with Econ Story's new fake holiday album, Deck the Halls with Macro Follies.
Deck the halls with macro follies. Fa la 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 la.
Enjoy the greatest collection of economic holiday hits ever aggregated.
Decking the halls with macro follies once again. So, what's going on here? Well, first, let's go back to that graph that the fine financial gentleman pointed to with his lovely drawing of how we keep spending more and more of every dollar we earn on consumption. This right here is the graph that he was pointing to. This is the share of personal consumption expenditures as a share of GDP over time. And as you can see, if we start after the end of the Second World War, where things started to normalize in the 1950s, we are right around 59 to 60% of GDP is measured as people going to the store and buying stuff, consumers. It sometimes dips down to 58%, but it more or less hovers around there. And then there's an important thing that happens that I want to just note, because I think it does play a role in the transformation that comes next. And that is, in 1971, Richard Nixon cut the final ties between the US dollar and gold. It was called closing the gold window, and it was because basically the Fed was printing money like crazy to help pay for guns and butter, the Vietnam War, and more social programs as part of the Great Society. Welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. By preventing basically the only people that could still redeem US dollars and gold, which was international central banks and governments, it set the Fed free to print as much money as it liked with no consequences other than inflation. And so what starts to happen in the 1970s and continues through to our modern times is the share of total spending in the economy, GDP, devoted to personal consumption goes up and up and up. As we see, we move into the 80s, it creeps up into the mid 60s, and then we start to peak around almost 70% by 2011, and to this day, we're lingering right around 68% consumption as a share of GDP. So if the pundits and politicians are correct, we should be seeing accelerating growth. After all, the consumer drives the economy, and consumption drives growth, and we need to be concerned about consumer sentiments and consumer spending. Well, what happened? Before we look at GDP growth, I want to point out the flip side of consumer spending, right? Money can either be spent or what? Saved. And so if you look at personal savings rates in the United States, they are the inverse mirror of the rise in consumer spending. Right here is the graph of the personal savings rate in the United States, again, over the same period, since the 1950s. As you can see, throughout that period, the 1960s and 70s, the personal savings rate in this country was 10, 11, sometimes as high as 12, 13%. And then starting around the collapse of the gold standard, the closing of the gold window, and the rise of inflation that followed, the savings rate in this country continued to go down. As consumer spending went up, savings went down. We're spending down our savings. We're spending all of our money as Americans. To the point where in the middle of the 2000s, 2005 and 6, the savings rate was only 2 to 3%. That's how much the average person was saving of their income. And in fact, after a brief explosion where the Fed printed tons of money and sent it to us, filling our bank accounts, and we were also prevented from buying anything because we were locked down in our homes, savings rates have once again fallen. So our savings rates in this country are lingering around 4 to 5%, less than half of the period between 1950 and 1980, roughly. So if you believe the mainstream, if you believe the Keynesian stimulus consumer spending crowd, this should all be good for growth. It turns out it's not. So, final graph. This is a graph of real GDP growth year over year over time. What do you see? Now, because of the variability, it can be a little hard to see the trends. You can, however, see overall, again, let's leave out 1942 when growth was at 18%, distorted by the war, or 1946, where the measurement of growth is also way out of whack with the end of the war. You see growth, 1950, 8.7%. You see highs, 7%, 6.9%. 1965, 6.5%. You see growth rates slow. Growth goes down. The more we've spent, the more consumers have used stuff up, the more growth has gone down. I took this data, exported the CSV file, and just looked at the averages per decade to just try to understand it because it's hard to see from here. From 1950 through 1969, the average rate of GDP growth in this country was 4.4%, at a period when savings was close to 11% and consumption was about 60% of GDP. 4.4%. This was sort of the high point as far as low consumption, high savings culture in America. Over the past decade, really since 2001, the average growth rate has been almost half, 2.4%. And if you look at it over time, each 20-year period has seen growth in this country decline along with savings, and exactly in the opposite direction of consumer spending going up. That is the facts. This is the plain old numbers. This is what we are looking at. Consumption doesn't drive growth. A couple percentage points difference in growth per year is an enormous change in the quality of life for Americans over time. Growth compounds. So when you subtract almost half of our growth rate, you are making Americans almost twice as poor over any given decade. This is a big deal. And this is the result of this Keynesian, spending-obsessed culture and policy imposing itself on we, the American people. And us buying into the lie that going to the store and buying stuff drives growth. It doesn't. It is the reason why we want growth, but it is not the driver of it. And before I explain why that is, I want to play the part of that Christmas video that tries to do it in a little bit of rhythm and rhyme.
Now, curl up by the fire with the classical crooning of Jean-Baptiste Say.
Hark, I hear a fallacy. Demand can't grow the economy. We produce so we can buy. Demand's enabled by supply. If our goal is more consumption, first we must increase production. Rising productivity is the path to prosperity. The law of markets tells us why growth is driven by supply.
Growth is driven by supply. Now, you might hear that and you might hear rhetoric ringing in your ear. What are you talking about? What is this? Are you saying it's like supply side economics, trickle down economics? What are you talking about? What I'm talking about is actually something really, really simple. And its simplicity has been masked in economic jargon and mumbo jumbo, going all the way back to the father of modern nonsense economics, John Maynard Keynes. This idea, the law of markets, was the foundation of our classical understanding of the way the economy worked. And that is to say that the way we end up with more demand, more money in our pockets, more ability to buy stuff and improve our lives, the way that you get that is by increasing your productivity, being able to make more stuff. I only can buy something at the shelf. I only have the money to go to Walmart or to Best Buy or to Amazon.com and take advantage of that Black Friday sale because I made the money to do it in the past, or I borrowed it from somebody else, which unfortunately is often the case. You know, we have seen personal debt rates go through the roof to fund our spending, and that means somebody else produced and made the money, and I borrowed it from them, and they couldn't spend it, so that I could. That is how growth happens, increasing our ability to produce stuff. When you think about it, it's very clear when you're on a desert island, right? If you drop 10 people on a desert island, they're barely scraping by. They're trying to grab fish out of the ocean and skin them with their bare hands and cook them on a fire. They've got to concoct right there on the spot. Hopefully it hasn't rained. And you are barely keeping up with life. You are consuming, but your consumption, it might be keeping you alive, but it isn't making you any better off than sustaining life. If you want to actually start to have leisure or anything like more of the things you want, you know, a nicer hut, something to do when you're not desperately trying to fish and find food, what you have to do is save. That is the actual mechanism. If you want to take the time to figure out how to catch more fish, to build a net, to construct a trap or a contraption, that is what investing is. You have to take the time and invest it into the capital that will make you more productive. That is the best model for how to think about savings and investment, and why higher savings, not higher consumption, leads to higher growth. Higher savings means we now have resources to invest in making ourselves more productive, figuring out how to do more with less, investing in factories, investing in R&D for new processes, new products. That is what drives growth. Savings drives growth, not consumption, not spending. And that's why all of the public policies, the inflation, the stimulus programs that try to push us to spend every nickel we've got, instead of save it for the future and make it available for people to borrow and invest, stand in the way of us having a faster growing, healthier economy. It also is the case that that very process is what actually increases our wages. The reason why today Americans' hour of work will buy more stuff than 50 or 100 years ago for an hour of work is precisely because we have managed to invest over time in things that make that 1 hour of work get a lot more done. Again, one more analogy. Economist Milton Friedman famously, or perhaps apocryphally, was visiting a public works job site in another country. I think it might have been Hong Kong. And he sees everyone digging a trench for a road using shovels instead of tractors. And he spoke to the foreman and said, I don't understand. You have modern machinery. Why are you using shovels instead of using a giant tractor? You could get so much more done so much more quickly. And the man said, well, sir, this is a jobs program. And his response was, well, if it's a jobs program, why not use spoons? The way we get more with less, the way we make more money, is by getting more productive. That is how we do it. We need to find a way to do more per hour worked. And then when we do that, and we finally have that money in our pocket, we need to save more of it than we currently do. And only then can we get into a healthier economic situation. So I hope you use this Friday's deals to keep a little bit of money in your pocket. If you're struggling, working paycheck to paycheck, I totally get it. And I hope your future brightens as we head into the new year. And I also just want to offer my gratitude to all of you who watch Dad Saves America here. It's been an incredible year for us. We entered 2024 with a little over 50,000 subscribers, and it looks like we might have 250,000 before the year is done. That is all thanks to you showing up, liking what we're doing, and hopefully liking this video. If you do, please leave a comment. If you think I have once again gone off the rails, let me know, and have a great holiday weekend.